So we have seen the expression for mass flow rate through the nozzle, that is m dot upon A2 is equal to square root of 2n upon n minus 1 P1 upon small v1 into bracket P2 upon P1 raised to 2 by n minus P2 upon P1 raised to n plus 1 upon n. Here you have to take care that this small v1 is nothing but specific volume. Okay, it is replacing this density. Okay, so this mass is equal to rho 2 A2 V2. So that rho 2 you can obtain in terms of V2. Okay, small 1 upon V2 is nothing but rho 2. So this V2, if you take P1 upon small v1 raised to n is equal to P2 upon small v1 P2 raised to V2 raised to n, then you can obtain this. So here it is a specific volume. Okay, not it is nothing but a specific volume. Okay, which is nothing but 1 by rho. Okay, so that is the expression. But overall you have to remember this expression. Now the derivation is very simple. Just you have to start from the basic. One by one you evaluate the steps, you will get the derivation. Now our aim is to find what is the maximum mass flow rate through this nozzle. If you see in this diagram, this is a convergent divergent type of nozzle. Okay, you might have heard about convergent divergent type of nozzle. Some nozzles are convergent nozzles, some nozzles are divergent nozzles. Okay, there is an area in between convergent and divergent section that is called as a throat. Okay, what is this that we are going to study in this lecture. Now if you see in this diagram, the mass flow rate takes place, or a mass flow takes place through this nozzle. Now where the maximum mass flow rate will happen, that we want to find. Okay, so here we are going to take the derivative of this mass flow rate with respect to some parameter that is called the pressure ratio. That P2 by P1 we have named it as y. So if you take d of dy, means d of P2 by P1, that is y nothing but P2 by P1, then it will be d of dy of y raised to 2 by n minus y raised to n plus 1 upon n is equal to 0, because other parameters are constant, so they will become 0 after going to the right side. So that's why we are only interested in taking the derivative of the term which is inside the bracket. So d of dy of y raised to 2n minus y raised to n plus 1 upon n is equal to 0. It gives you y is equal to 2 upon n plus 1 raised to n upon n minus 1, where y is nothing but P2 by P1. So you are getting P2 by P1 as equal to 2 upon n plus 1 raised to n upon n minus 1. N upon n minus 1. This is the condition for your maximum mass flow rate. Here it should be n upon n minus 1. Okay, n upon n minus 1. So this is called as a critical pressure ratio. This is called as a critical pressure ratio. This ratio is nothing but here is the pressure is P1. Okay, and at the exit pressure is P2. Okay, so pressure goes on decreasing, as we know. So as the pressure goes on decreasing, we want to find at which pressure the mass flow rate is maximum, and for that we have used the maxima condition. So it is giving you that P2, which is nothing but apart from this pressure, everything is P2 over this line. So at which P2 you are getting maximum mass flow rate, at which section you are getting maximum mass flow rate, that we can obtain by putting the values in this section. So 2 upon n plus 1 raised to n upon n minus 1 will give you the value only if you know the value of n. So n is nothing but, okay, it is your adiabatic index. Okay, 1.4 as we know. Okay, it is for air, it is 1.4 for diatomic gases. N is equal to 1.3 for super saturated steam. Okay, or superheated steam also you can say. So 1.3 you can take. N is equal to 1.135 for dry saturated steam. From steam table you know superheated steam, dry saturated steam and wet steam. Okay, and n is equal to 1.035 plus 0.1x for wet steam. So n value changes. So depending upon the value of n, you can get the values of critical pressure ratio. So if you put the value of n, suppose you are taking 1.4, you solve it for this P2 by P1 is equal to 2 upon 1.4 plus 1 raised to 1.4 upon 1.4 minus 1. You will get the value of P2. Okay, so that will be your critical value, and that value is called as a critical pressure ratio, where you are getting the maximum mass flow rate. So this is only the expression for derivation of the velocity, exit velocity through the nozzle, and mass flow rate through the nozzle. Let us quickly see the nozzle efficiency and nozzle coefficient or velocity coefficient. What do you mean by nozzle efficiency? Now we know that in nozzle the flow takes place isentropic. Ideal flow is isentropic 1 to 2, but the actual flow there is a friction in the nozzle. Because of friction there is a loss, and that's why there is a nozzle efficiency. Nozzle efficiency is nothing but actual enthalpy drop, which is 1 to 2 dash upon the ideal enthalpy drop, which is 1 to 2, which is isentropic enthalpy drop. So and nozzle efficiency is H1 minus H2 dash upon H1 minus H2. You can say H1 minus H2. So nozzle coefficient, what is nozzle coefficient? Nozzle coefficient is nothing but actual exit velocity to the isentropic exit velocity. It is the ratio of exit velocity. Okay, actual exit velocity is V2 dash and ideal exit velocity is V2. So here it is V2 upon V2 dash. Okay, it is E for exit. So V2 dash upon V2. What is V2 dash? V2 dash you can write from your expression V2 is equal to square root of 2 times H1 minus H2. We have seen V2 is equal to square root of 2 times H1 minus H2. So if you put here 2 will get cancelled. So it will be under root of H1 minus H2 dash. That will be the actual exit velocity. This is reverse. Actually this is VE dash upon VE. It is reverse. So it is square root of H1 minus H2 dash upon under root of H1 minus H2. So this is called as a nozzle efficiency. This H1 minus H2 dash upon H1 minus H2 is called as a nozzle efficiency. But it is under root. That's why nozzle coefficient is nothing but square root of nozzle efficiency. That you have to remember. So it's only definition that we have to remember. Nozzle efficiency, that is actual enthalpy drop upon isentropic enthalpy drop, and nozzle coefficient is the square root of nozzle efficiency. Okay. There are no numericals. That's why we are not going to see the numericals on nozzle. Only we'll see types of nozzles. Just I have mentioned that convergent nozzle, divergent nozzle and convergent divergent type of nozzles are used. What do you mean by convergent nozzle only? Now I have told you that there is a critical pressure ratio where you are getting maximum mass flow rate. Okay, so when to use the convergent nozzle, when to use the divergent nozzle, that depends upon application. Suppose the pressure requirement, okay, for the application is less than the critical pressure, or it may be greater than the critical pressure, or it may be equal to critical pressure. Depending upon that, you are using whether you are going to use divergent nozzle or convergent nozzle or convergent divergent nozzle. So if your application is such that the pressure at the exit is greater than the exit pressure, is greater than the critical pressure, then you are using a convergent nozzle. So if this is a convergent nozzle, okay, we have seen, and this is a throat. At throat you are getting the critical pressure ratio. So if your application is such that the exit pressure you want as a pressure greater than the critical pressure, then you are going to use the convergent nozzle. So a typical convergent nozzle as shown in the figure, here the cross sectional area goes on decreasing. That's why it is named as a convergent nozzle, and it is used in a case where the back pressure is equal to or greater than the critical pressure ratio. Okay, then divergent nozzle. This is a divergent nozzle. The cross sectional area of divergent nozzle increases. It is a divergent section. That's why it is increasing. But its application is what? When you have to use the divergent nozzle, the divergent nozzle is used when the application is such that you are getting you requires the pressure less than the critical pressure. Okay, so divergent, here you are getting the pressure less than the critical pressure. So pressure goes on decreasing. So as here you are getting suppose critical pressure, then you are going below the critical pressure. So it depends on the application. Okay, certain application you are using divergent nozzle. Then convergent divergent nozzle. Convergent divergent nozzle is nothing but the combination of both convergent as well as divergent region, and in between there is a throat. So suppose there is a long range of pressure, means you are taking the steam at a very high pressure, suppose 100 bar, 200 bar, okay, and you are decreasing it up to 2 bar or 3 bar. Then this much high pressure decrement, you have to use a nozzle which will give you very less pressure, and we know that pressure goes on decreasing throughout the length of the nozzle. So such decrement can be obtained only in case of the combination of both convergent to divergent portion, because divergent it can be used only after critical, and convergent it can be used only before critical. So what about the longer pressure range? For that you are using the convergent divergent nozzle. So convergent divergent nozzle is the most widely used type of nozzle, because the steam turbine is a such a turbine which is handling higher pressures among all the turbines. That's why we are going to use the convergent divergent nozzle for such applications. Okay, so the pressure range is high for steam turbines. Now let us see what do you mean by steam turbine. Steam turbine converts a part of the energy of steam by high temperature and high pressure into mechanical power or electrical power. So it is converting the high pressure and high temperature steam energy into mechanical energy. Okay, and then it is converting, generator is converting that mechanical energy into electrical energy. Okay, how it is obtained? The steam from the boiler is expanded in a nozzle, resulting in the emission of high velocity jet. This high velocity jet is impinged on the blades of the turbine, and you are getting the rotation of the shaft. Okay, and this will cause the mechanical work to be produced. Okay, and the motive power in a steam turbine is obtained by the rate of change of momentum of high velocity. We know the impulse momentum principle, as the principle is same as we have studied in hydraulic turbines also. The same principle is there, only instead of water here there is a steam, but the force, that is nothing but Newton's second law of motion, will remain same, that we have to apply. And the conversion of energy in the blades takes place by impulse reaction or impulse reaction principle. Means we have studied what do you mean by impulse turbine, what do you mean by reaction turbine, and what is the difference between impulse and reaction. If you remember, for hydraulic turbines, if the total pressure energy is converted into kinetic energy, okay, at the outlet of the nozzle, then it is called as a impulse turbine. And if the total pressure energy or the potential energy is converted into partially pressure energy and kinetic energy, okay, partial pressure and partial kinetic energy, then it is called as a reaction turbine. So that's why the same concept is there. If inside the nozzle you are converting total pressure into the kinetic energy, then that is called as a impulse turbine. But across the turbine blades also, if you are decreasing the pressure, that means the pressure energy is converted into partially pressure energy plus partial kinetic energy, then it will be called as a reaction. So principle is same. Principle is same. There is no change. Okay, so steam turbines are available from few kilowatt to 1500 megawatt. See the range. Okay, while if you see the hydraulic turbines, it was only at the most you can get the hydraulic turbines, okay, up to 250 megawatt or 300 megawatt. Okay, that is the largest range, or you can go for more also, but the construction cost of hydraulic turbine will be very high. Okay, and you can't go for such high power producing device. Okay, but steam turbine, you can generate high pressures in the steam. Okay, and that's why you can go up to 1500 megawatt also. What are the merits and demerits of steam turbine? The merits are ability to utilize high pressure and high temperature steam. It can handle high pressure and high temperature steam. You can increase the pressure of the steam as much as possible because coal is used. Okay, by burning coal you are increasing the pressure of the steam or pressure of the water. Okay, by heating the water you are converting into steam and increasing the pressure, and this high pressure and high temperature steam, as much as high pressure you can obtain, that much high work done will be obtained. High component efficiency. Okay, you can have the efficiency of steam turbine very high. Rotational speed can be produced very higher, that will produce higher work done. High capacity to work ratio, weight ratio, or power to weight ratio, power produced will be higher. And smooth, nearly vibration free operation. No internal lubrication is not needed in this case. Oil free exhaust steam can be built in small or very large units. Okay, there is wide range for steam turbines, that's why it is used. The most widely used turbines for power plant or power plants are steam power plants, okay, in the world. Okay, but as well as demerits are also there, because the pollution is the most important factor for steam turbine. Okay, because you have to burn coal, that's why the pollution is a very serious factor in case of steam turbine. Similarly, for slow speed application, reduction gears are required because that speed is to be reduced, that we know. Okay, for that you have to use this reduction gears. Steam turbine cannot be made reversible. Okay, it is irreversible process. You might have studied in thermodynamics, Rankine cycle. The efficiency of simple steam power turbines is poor. Okay, you can go for higher range of pressure, but for smaller range efficiency is a problem. Okay, so that is the then applications. Okay, these are the applications: power generation, pharmaceutical, food processing. Okay, We'll see in the next lecture. Thank you.